Hey everyone, please comment or if somebody's there. Sorry I lost you. I'm not really sure what happened. I'm waiting for my wife or somebody to respond. I think my internet went out, so I don't see any of you guys here. I'm just gonna go. If we lose it, hopefully I can record this. I'll just post it later and it won't be live. Sorry about that. Again, we live up in the mountains, so sometimes our internet's awesome and sometimes it's not so awesome. So for new members, I just wanted to welcome you again. Thank you so much for joining this group. Hopefully you get something out of it. My name is Burton LaTulip. Okay, today I'm going to be talking about something that's a little more lighthearted, but I actually think it's really important, and it is that raising children for greatness, this philosophy that I teach in here with this series, a lot of people think, man, it's probably so strict. It's probably so hard. It must be joyless. They imagine that our kids are this joyless, overworked kids. It's not that at all, actually. Actually, when I look at the public school system and I see those kids in there, I think, man, that is joyless. When I was there, it was very joyless. The only thing I really enjoyed was sports. And that was a problem. I probably put too much time, too much energy into sports, becoming a great wrestler. And then you get out to the road and you realize, it doesn't really apply a lot of it. I wish I would have mastered maybe a marketable skill when I was in school. So, and those kids are sitting in desks all day long. They're following somebody else's curriculum. A lot of it's very boring. It's not interesting to them. They're not following their dreams. So I think of that as kind of joyless, not what we're doing. Now, what we're doing is we are setting the bar high. We have high standards for our kids. We're very strict. We expect a lot of them, but that doesn't mean it has to be joyless. Kids like to be challenged. They like to be pushed. They like to achieve things. We tend to think that they're just so shallow that it's all about fun. Kids need to have fun. And if we can make learning more fun, that'll motivate our kids. Well, kids actually, just like everybody, they like to have fun sometimes, but they also like challenges. They like to accomplish things in the real world. So they're actually very much like us. And when you tailor everything to fun, it can actually become kind of joyless and depressing. Kids aren't accomplishing anything. They're sitting in front of their video games all day, or they're playing all day, and at the end of the day, they haven't produced anything, and in the sense, that's kind of joyless. So what we're doing doesn't have to be joyless. I wanted to show you one thing really quick. For those of you who read the book, you know that we take away our kids' toys when they turn 7. That's the age of reason, when a kid kind of transitions from that, really childishness as he becomes 5, 6, then at 7, he really starts to mature, starts to understand a little bit more, think a little bit more like an adult. I'm not saying he's an adult, but he's starting to think that way. So we removed the toys. This isn't a sad time. People think, oh, the kids are probably crying. It's probably horrible. It's actually not. It's kind of like a rite of passage in our house. We have a special family dinner for the older kids, and when you turn 7, you kind of give up your toys. They give them up, actually, and usually they're excited to do it because it is a rite of passage. So they give up their toys. They realize they're going to be respected more. They get to go to the special family dinner, which is for 7 and up. And we talk about different things at that dinner that the younger kids can't understand. But I wanted to show you something that my kids have made because we don't have a lot of toys, even for the younger kids. This is a robot. I mean, you might not think much. It came from the scrap pile. It's just some blocks of wood. There actually has a head to it nailed here. And you know what? My kids made it, and so they love it even more. So they do have toys. They play with stuff. This is something, you look at it and you think, man, that's just so whatever. But kids like it. My boy Colton nailed this together for his little brother, Jonathan. And Jonathan got it and was ecstatic and plays with it a lot. So this is the robot. And then they actually built a tank. This is just some scrap wood that they nailed together. So you don't have to have a huge toy bin. This is actually better for kids anyway. It's creative. They're learning how to use wood and nails and stuff. But it's creative, and they made it for each other. So our kids aren't necessarily deprived. It's not like they never play because we didn't go out and spend a ton of money on toys. I just wanted you to see that. So they still are kind of normal kids. They built that yesterday. I thought that was cool. They build bow and arrows and stuff. And then eventually I have to scrap them because they actually do a lot of this stuff. It's everywhere. And eventually, we scrap it and we move on or we build something new. That's one thing. All right, toys. The other thing I want to talk about is sports. I talk about this book. That's kind of been controversial about sports. I don't let my kids play sports year round. We do jiu-jitsu. That's a little different. That's a martial art. You learn. It's a useful skill. It's self-defense. There are jobs and careers you can get that military and police and stuff that you'd use that for. But even just defending yourself or your property or your family, that's a useful skill. It's great exercise. But when it comes to putting a ball in a net or a hoop or something like that, I don't allow my kids to do that full time. They can play anytime they want. They can kick a soccer ball in the backyard, but they're not on a team. They're not pursuing that, perfecting those skills, because in my opinion, it's not a great use of time. It takes a lot of time and energy. I used to play soccer. It takes a lot of time and energy to master those skills of dribbling and hitting the ball, kicking the ball just right, and you could practice that for hours and hours and hours. It almost becomes like a profession. It's not a hobby anymore. It becomes profession. Your coach is yelling at you. He's pushing you. He wants you to be the best. And kids start to think that is almost like their career path, like their calling. And they start to dedicate a ton of time and a ton of energy and their focus. It becomes all of their goals start to revolve around that sport. And it's not healthy, because in the real world, when they get out on their own, that all that they've mastered will have no real world application. But that doesn't mean our kids don't have fun. It doesn't mean they can't play sports in the backyard. Like I said, our kids do jujitsu, and that's fun. But I see that as something that's useful. Another thing, you haven't read it yet. This is on education. The other one's on school. The next one coming out is on character development. And there's a huge chapter. I think the fattest chapter in the book is on discipline. And people think that my discipline style, it must be so strict. Again, it must result in a joyless childhood for kids. That's actually not the case. I talk about it in the book. I don't want to reveal too much, but it's kind of a paradox that the more strict you are as a disciplinarian, actually the less likely your kids are to get in trouble, to get disciplined. When I was in public school, it wasn't super strict compared to when I went to prep school, military boarding school in Virginia. It wasn't very strict. I got in trouble all the time. I was always in trouble. I was in detention a lot. I was put out in the hallway a lot when I was in elementary school because I goofed around, because it wasn't very strict. The disciplines weren't very severe, so I risked it. I didn't care if they put me in the hallway or put me in detention. We had more fun in detention. It was where all the bad kids went. We had a great time in detention. They used to put me on the line during recess. That was no big deal. My friends came over and we hung out on the line. No big deal. When I went to military boarding school, it was so strict. I was a different person the day I walked on campus. You could just tell, like, these people, they're not going to take that garbage. And the discipline was so strict. You could get, let's say you swore. In public school, you might get a warning. You might get a detention for 45 minutes. There you might get 10 demerits, 10 tours at military boarding school. And a single tour is, it's a tour of duty. It was 45 minutes long. And you could get 10 of them. That's 450 minutes for swearing, and you'd either do a detail, and there wasn't a whole lot to do, or you would just march. We used to stand and salute the sun as it set for hours, and that was all of our free time, and there was hardly any of it. But now you did it duty, so it was very, very, very strict, and they enforced the rules. There was no warnings. It just, if you did it, you got punished. So you think, oh man, again, that must be a horrible place. You must always be getting punished. We didn't. We just avoided doing the bad things because we didn't want to get in trouble. So that's kind of the paradox of strict parenting. I'm so strict with my kids and I enforce it immediately that they just don't do it. They're hardly ever in trouble because they just don't cross that line. Because they know they're not going to get a warning unless they're little and they're learning. But they're not going to get a warning, and they're going to be disciplined swiftly and strictly. So again, it's not joyless, because the more likely you are to discipline, the quicker you are to discipline, your kids will take it serious. It's like touching a hot stove. You get burned one time after you touch that stove, you don't touch it again because you've learned. So with my kids, they make a few mistakes when they're younger, and by the time they're 6 or 7, they require very little discipline, and they're well behaved. There's not all that tension and fighting between us. So it's actually pretty joyful. It's a great way to do it. I'm not saying it's perfect. We have one child that's a little bit more of a challenge than others. But in general, I'd say that it's pretty good. And instead of other parents, they're worrying about the drugs and these big, huge things and the attitudes. And I know kids who just cuss at their parents or tell them off or shut up, dad. And we're dealing with, like, you didn't say, yes, dad, or you kind of did it with a little bit of attitude. So we're dealing with minor things compared to what a lot of other people are. So that's coming. That's in the discipline. The next thing people imagine, they imagine that raising children for greatness, it's going to be super hard on the parent. I remember there's this book a while ago. I read it. It was really controversial. I think it was called the tiger mom or something. And she talks about how strict she was. And I remember her talking about how she was screaming at her kids because they weren't doing their piano and how hard it was. And then at the end of it, the kids actually appreciated it. It was kind of that tough love. But she put so much time and energy. And it just, when you read it, it just sounds exhausting. She just overworks her kids. She overworks herself. And you think, man, to be that kind of parent, it must just be exhausting. Raising children for greatness, the philosophy that we promote in these books, in this series, is not exhausting. If anything, it's the opposite. If you discipline your kids properly, you shouldn't have to scream at them and yell at them to try to motivate them. There shouldn't be all this tension and this disrespect in your home, so you don't have to deal with that. If you're educating your kids for greatness, you're not sitting down there teaching them every day. I know so many homeschool parents, and they should get a special medal for their effort. Absolutely. But that's not what we're preaching here. We spent a lot of time, not even a lot of time anymore, but we spent a bit of time with our first kid, Audrey, and some with Emma, and we taught them how to read. That's the main thing. We taught them how to read when they were young, and do some math and stuff like that. But once our kids were older, we got to kind of set back, and that's actually part of the philosophy. It actually goes better when you let your kids take charge of their education. They set their own goals. They make their own schedule. They're more motivated. They run ahead. It's a principle we talked about before with motivation. If you let them lead, or at least take an active role in their education, you don't have to crack the whip every day. I don't have to sit down every day and push my kids to do it. I don't have to read all their lessons. They can read themselves. And it's very a self-driven education. So I spend most days in my office. I write these books. I illustrate children's books for Blue Manor Academy. I write a lot of those too. I work on the business and stuff, and I usually am in my office most days. And my wife, she does a ton too. So the kids mostly educate themselves, and we have our older children, part of their leadership training, I've talked about this in other videos, so I don't want to get too much into it, but they basically educate their younger siblings. And the bar's been raised. I mean, they have the time, the energy, they're excited about it. So it's not like the younger kids are getting inferior education. Actually, every kid seems to be learning more faster, and it's kind of become a family culture, and it's very hands-off for me and my wife. We don't have to do a whole lot. I don't know what all my kids did today. I just know that they were learning, that they were on sites, and they all kind of have different passions and go different directions, but they learn all day long. And if you've ever met them, I mean, some of them are super smart. My son Colin just blows everybody away with his math, and now Jonathan's that way. Our kids are all chess champions. People think, man, you must sit there and coach them or take them lessons. I don't. They pretty much teach themselves. My daughter did 3 hours of chess. That's Emma. She's become super passionate. She wants to go to nationals for the women. It probably won't be this year because of coronavirus, but she did like 3 hours on her own. We didn't tell her to. We didn't have to scream at her like the tiger mom. She is passionate. She's motivated. She sets her own schedule and goals. So I really want you to understand that. I don't want to make this a long video. Some of the others have been 40 minutes. I just wanted to kind of do a lighthearted one today and say that it is fun. It doesn't have to be super hard. If you're doing the techniques properly, if you do this right, this shouldn't be a struggle. Your kids are going to enjoy it. We think a pile of toys makes a happy kid. I disagree with that. A lot of kids are spoiled, and they're used to so much entertainment and so many exciting toys and everything. It's really spoiled them to the point that they can't even enjoy the simple things anymore. They need something screaming and exciting all the time. And it's like eating cake every day. You have a few bites, that was so good, and then you eat more of it and more of it and more of it, and it kills your appetite because you're so used to eating cake. Nothing tastes good because you've got the bar up here, but then cake kind of wears itself out and you have nothing left. I think of like the people in Hollywood. They have these huge fancy houses. They have all the wealth and all the fame. And then a lot of them, they'll say that, I was suicidal or I got addicted to drugs and stuff because you felt so empty. It's like they've achieved everything that they could dream of and imagine. They're on the top and they have nothing else to really, I don't want to say live for, but they're just so spoiled. Like every meal is so good for them. They have the best clothes and all that stuff. It leaves nothing to hope for. Anyway, that's really what spoiled means. It's like spoiling your dinner. When you eat something before, you lose that appetite. So again, we talked about that in motivational principles. I don't want to go into that too much. I just want you to know that that it will seem very counterintuitive. So much today is tailored towards the kids and fun and silliness, and we think that that's the proper way to raise a kid. And if you look at the kids today, they're not super excited. There's a huge wave of depression and bullying and just all sorts of self-esteem issues that are in these kids today, where we think we're tailoring and we're promoting self-esteem. These kids, a lot of them have low self-esteems, a lot of them are miserable. And what we're doing with our kids, they're not. They have their goals set. They're excited about life. They're excited to wake up a lot of times. They do challenges with their friends. And so we don't tailor to the fun, but I think they have more than fun. They have a fulfilling life. They have fun sometimes, but they also know how to work hard. And that's exciting. And when you achieve something after hard work, that's fulfilling. So they have that too. I think a lot of other kids don't have the fulfilling. They have the toys, they have the fun, the excitement, but they don't have a fulfilling life. And if you think of yourself, if you partied all the time or on cruises and you're drinking and just living it up, the high life, you would eventually become depressed because that's not what we're supposed to be doing. We're supposed to be accomplishing things. We want to accomplish something. We want our life to make a difference. It's not all about fun. If you live your whole life and all you do is party at the end, you think, man, what did I accomplish? What did I leave to the world? And that's really depressing. There's something inside of us, even at a very young age. Young children imagine, like, I'm going to make a difference. People are going to remember my name. I'm going to change the world. And that is fulfilling. That is joyful. So joy is a little bit different than fun. It may not be as exciting all the time, but it's fulfilling. It leads to a happier, fulfilling life. Okay, I'm rambling now. At any rate, that's it. I just wanted to reassure you that your kids will be happy. You're not depriving them using these methods. It's quite the opposite. You're actually empowering them, and they will have a joyful childhood if you do it right. So, all right, guys, thank you so much. I will be back next week. I'll try to have something a little bit less rambly, a little bit more tailored on Wednesday, and then Friday we'll have some fun. We'll talk like this. Thank you guys so much. We'll talk to you later. Bye.